Hello everyone, welcome to this morning's webinar to find out more about Glasgow Helps and NHS Greater Glasgow Clyde's crisis support in hospitals. It's great to see so many of you join us online today. This session is brought to you by the Glasgow Fair Food for All Partnership in collaboration with Glasgow Helps, NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde Support and Information Services, and supported by the Glasgow Centre for Population Health. My name is Faiza Hansraj Jackson. I'm a public health practitioner specialist at the Glasgow Centre for Population Health, and I'm also the coordinator for Glasgow's Cash First project. In today's session, you will find out more about two services which are based in different settings, both using Cash First approaches, and both aiming to ensure people can access the right support when they need it. The presentation will be followed by the opportunity for you to ask questions. Before we start, I just want to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded, and we will circulate the link of the recording to participants. You will also be able to access the recording and slides on the GCPH website, along with other GCPH webinars. If you have any questions for our speakers today, please use the Q&A function only. We will do our best to get your questions answered, but we might not be able to ask all of them due to the number of attendees here today. We would ask you to use the Q&A function for questions rather than general comments. Our events team will be using the chat function to post links that are relevant to the presentations. And now, I'm very pleased to introduce you to Cara Marie Connolly. She is a development advisor in Glasgow City Council in the No Wrong Door Test of Change team. This service is comprised of Glasgow Helps, improving the cancer journey and long-term conditions, and works towards the shared ambition of eradicating poverty through offering holistic support to citizens across Glasgow. Cara Marie focuses on identifying areas of potential development, establishing links with partner organisations, and continually improving processes to ensure that citizens can access the right support in the right place at the right time. I'll hand over to you, Cara Marie. Take it away.
Morning everyone, thank you very much for the introduction, Faiza. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today to tell you all a wee bit about Glasgow Helps, how we work and what we can offer in terms of support. I'm not sure if any of you will have heard of or worked with us prior to today's call, but I'm hoping that either way I'll be able to share some new information that you may find helpful or to answer any questions you may have at the end. So just to give a brief bit of background into Glasgow Helps, as Faiza mentioned, we are part of the No Wrong Door Test of Change team in Glasgow City Council's Chief Executive Department. We're made up of Glasgow Helps, Improving the Cancer Journey and the Long-Term Condition Services, with many of our staff working across all three service offerings. The Long-Term Conditions Benefit team is made up of our welfare rights officers who offer financial advice to those living with long-term conditions such as chest, heart and stroke survivors. Improving the Cancer Journey is working in partnership with Macmillan, and for the past decade has been supporting people affected by a cancer diagnosis in Glasgow. Glasgow Helps emerged more recently through Glasgow City Council's COVID response. The service was formalised a couple of years ago. Ever since, we've been working to support citizens across Glasgow who need a wee bit of help through taking a holistic approach. That could be largely with food through our connections with Glasgow's food bank and pantry networks, through linking people into the Wise Group's relational maintenance scheme, for example, for fuel support, through our connections with apparel exchange clothing offering, through supporting people with housing applications, tenancy advice. We have a housing officer who's embedded in our team on secondment. But it's also just through being there to listen to people speak about their situation, which, as I'm sure we're all aware, giving someone that time and space to be listened to can be the start of a door opening or a new journey, so to speak. We're always very mindful of the fact that that person may not have shared their situation before. And as we all know, also there is existing stigma around poverty, around loneliness people may be experiencing. So it's really important that we treat everyone with the care, consideration and the respect that they deserve. I'll just quickly touch upon these to give you all an idea of what values we have running through our daily engagement with people and organisations across the city. For example, as I just referenced, ensuring everyone's treated as an individual, tailoring the support offered on a case-by-case basis according to unique circumstances. And I'll go into a wee bit more detail on that with some examples shortly. This next slide just provides a bit of insight into our development in Glasgow the past couple of years. So we have around 220 inbound contacts per week for new and existing users. Since October 2023, we've referred out to nearly 200 services and organisations, but I can tell you that this number will have undoubtedly went up since I last saved these slides yesterday. We're continually looking to expand and grow and to find solutions as situations are presented to us by citizens. So we continually recognise that Glasgow has so much to offer, and it's our aim to tap into as much as that as we can to help improve people's lives. So also just to note that between October 2023 and the end of July this year, almost 8,000 citizens engaged with Glasgow Helps, and that's individuals, that's not counting whether people have returned or got back in touch with us at a later date. It could be that they've just came back for further support. It could be one-off interactions. It could be sustained support. It looked different for everyone. You'll see here too that we've made just under 10,000 unique referrals to over 250 agencies and organisations. And as I said, we're always looking to expand and make sure that we're offering people the best support out there. So I'll go on here to tell you all a wee bit about our team, starting off with our first point of contact. It's worth mentioning that anyone can refer to us as long as they're living in a Glasgow City Council postcode. Organisations can refer on the citizens' behalf also, as long as consent has been given for that referral to take place. We have our phone lines open 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and our referral form is always available online. If a citizen calls in, they will speak to one of our customer service advisors who will have an initial chat with the person to establish safety, to talk about immediate concerns, and to arrange access to any referral pathways such as food, financial assistance, and whatever they may need at that time. The person will then be offered a further call with one of our support assistants who conduct follow-ups to ascertain how often this is happening. For example, if the person has contacted us and said they've got no food in the house, so we would have a conversation with them to find out how often this is happening, what we can do to prevent them getting in this situation again, and how we can work with them going forward to just ensure they're supported. Just this year, we have introduced a new tool for these calls, to the follow-up calls, I should say, to help citizens reflect upon what they would most like support with. This is a mirror of what we offer for improving the cancer journey, and is known as a concerns checklist or a electronic holistic needs assessment. This looks at physical, emotional and practical concerns and allows our assistants to get a bit of a heads up, so to speak, prior to their appointment with the citizen. It allows them to do potentially some research into what is most relevant to the person prior to the chat, so that they can both make best use of the time. And importantly, it also allows us to create care plans addressing these concerns. So we only took this out of the pilot stage this summer, so very much looking forward to getting this further embedded into our work, but overwhelmingly the feedback has been really positive. So also, if our support assistants work with someone that they feel may need more intensive support, they would then refer them to our holistic support officer team for case management. And I'll just share a wee bit of information about their work. So our holistic support officers, or HSOs as I'll refer to them, work closely alongside citizens as an ally and focus on confidence building, empowering them, ensuring they need to get to where they need to be. They work with small caseloads, small focus caseloads, and work with people for an average of 89 days, engaging on a range of concerns with them to give them a chance to thrive in Glasgow. I'm just going to talk through an example of someone who came into contact with Glasgow Helps through the lens of our customer service advisors, and I'll just provide a couple of examples for each job role in the team, just to give a sense of the range of support and how we adapt to that. So Alma contacted Glasgow Helps via our online referral form quite late at night, stating that she was worried about managing finances, accessing food, and just getting by in general due to accrued debts. She was in full-time employment, so had been apprehensive to get in touch, thinking that she wasn't as in need or wouldn't be eligible. And this is something that we come across quite a lot, and we're always assuring people that our only real eligibility is that you live in a Glasgow postcode, and we will do our best to support anyone that comes into our services. So after a call from one of our advisors within a day of submitting the referral, food provision was offered, as well as a couple of suggestions where to go for financial support. A follow-up call was made 2 days after this to ensure Alma had been able to access a food referral and to see if she needed anything further. And this is something that we endeavour to do, just to make sure that people have been able to access things we've put in place, to see if they need anything further down the line, and just to make sure they're okay ultimately. On speaking to Alma again, she spoke highly of the experience she'd had with Glasgow Helps. So when we spoke to Alma again on the follow-up call, she spoke highly of the experience she had with Glasgow Helps, and she appreciated the quick response times and the approachability of the advisor that she spoke to. She was offered a further call with a support assistant, but assured us that she had reached out to friends and family about her situation after speaking to us, and was doing better as a result. She knew to come back to Glasgow Helps if there were any further setbacks in the future. So I have an example of someone that's worked closely with one of our support assistants. Luke, a single father of 2 young daughters, called into Glasgow Helps sounding rather distressed and upset. This was due to having no working washing machine at home, and therefore no clean school uniforms for his kids. Due to this, it kept them off school. Luke didn't have much family or nearby support, so felt isolated and also worried due to the school continually phoning to ask why the children were absent. On speaking with one of our support assistants, who with Luke went through a range of potential options for grants funding, while assuring Luke that this hardship could fall on anyone and that they were doing the right thing by reaching out for help. Luke was also set up with fuel support due to accrued debts to help alleviate that stress it was causing. Within 1 working day, a grant for a new washing machine had been sourced, and Luke was absolutely delighted with this outcome, said no further support was needed, but Luke was encouraged to contact us again in the future if anything else was required. And that turnaround was due to the hard work of our support assistant, my colleague, who really was looking at all sorts of options and checking in with Luke, phoning up, asking questions, saying, how do you feel about this? Would this work for you? And then confirming when it was all arranged. So that was due to that kind of ongoing relationship they had with that person in that short period of time. So I have a bit of a longer case study as an example for someone that's worked with our holistic support officers. Stephanie was referred to the Glasgow Helps team. Her referral came initially from our family nurse, as Stephanie, an 18-year-old expectant mother, was facing significant financial challenges following the breakup of her relationship and changes in her employment contract. From the beginning of her engagement with Glasgow Helps, it was clear that Stephanie was hesitant to accept the support on offer. Stephanie had been engaging with her family nurse, but was reluctant to work with others. Stephanie's care experience and was now living in a small room in a family member's home. She was anxious about potential noise and disruption that could be caused by a visit to her home. Her reluctance to engage was rooted in a desire for privacy and independence, as well as a fear of relying too heavily on others. Glasgow Helps holistic support officer recognised these concerns and worked patiently with Stephanie and her family nurse, taking the time to understand her situation and to ensure that their approach was respectful, supportive and on her terms. In the early stages, Stephanie was primarily focused on immediate financial support and was reluctant to broaden the conversation beyond these needs. However, Glasgow Helps persisted, understanding the importance of sustained engagement. Over time, as trust was built, Stephanie began to open up about her concerns for the future, particularly her fears about providing for her child and the uncertainty she felt about how her life would change after giving birth. Stephanie and her HSO began to talk things through and worked towards the creation of a care plan that they would collaborate on to resolve the issues and concerns she had raised. Committing to this would give them a focus and a set of objectives to work on, but they'd also agreed that their care plan could change and develop based on her needs. Through the relationship they were beginning to develop, her HSO was able to bring in support from One Parent Family Scotland. OPFS were able to provide help that extended well beyond the initial ask of supporting with her finances, with their financial inclusion team able to provide wider information about her upcoming childbirth and all the supports that would come with it. With her initial concerns being addressed, Stephanie disclosed that she aspired to have her own home before giving birth. At this stage, her HSO was able to bring in a housing specialist who was seconded into the Glasgow Helps team. Her help and expertise allowed them to support Stephanie into a new home shortly before she gave birth. OPFS and Glasgow Helps were able to also assist her in furnishing her home, which was a crucial step in supporting her to feel at home at such an important time in her life. After the birth of a healthy baby, the focus shifted to supporting Stephanie through the early days of childbirth. The team met with her and her new child in their new home and began to discuss what came next for them both, with childcare and her own education placed at the forefront. These were added to her care plan and conversations began with colleges and childcare providers. The practical support that Stephanie received made an immediate difference in her life, allowing her to feel more settled, supported and secure as she prepared for motherhood. So if we look at Stephanie's journey, initially she'd been hesitant to accept help. At 18, pregnant and working part-time, she'd prioritised working independence over seeking support and felt that she could manage on her own. However, as Glasgow Helps and OPFS continued to engage with her, she began to realise that accepting help could allow her to achieve her goals rather than diminish her independence. Through taking a strengths-based approach to support, her HSO recognised the very same independence that made her reluctant to accept support was in fact a strength that should be nurtured and would serve her and her child very well in life. At the time this case study was written, Stephanie was preparing to return to college with a clear aspiration. She wants to work in the NHS, helping others just as she was helped during her time of need. She is driven by her own experiences. With her case now closed to our Glasgow Helps HSO, they remain in contact to check in, and Stephanie is always aware of where support lies for her in Glasgow and in our local community. Stephanie's story highlights the transformative power of holistic person-centred support She's now set to return to education, pursue a career and provide a bright future for her child in Glasgow. And just on that as well, I have a couple of examples here of user feedback from citizens who've worked with us. And I think ultimately this is all that matters to me at the end of the day, that people feel supported. They felt that they were listened to. They felt that they'd been given time, nothing was rushed. And yeah, the third one down, that someone felt that they were supported and someone cared when they were very stressed. That's really important to us and ultimately what we're trying to do here at Glasgow Helps. So just finally, this is a note of our phone number. As I mentioned, we are open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 on our phone lines, or we have our online referral form, which is available always on the Glasgow City Council website, and we can share that link with everyone here today if they have anyone in mind that could use the services of Glasgow Helps. Thank you all for listening, for your time, and absolutely happy to answer any questions at the end. Thanks very much.
That was great, Carmery. Thank you so much. Great to hear about the range of holistic support, but also really good to hear some case studies about actual experiences that people have had. I'm sure that brings it all a bit more to life for people. And ultimately, yes, the feedback, having positive feedback is wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Right, next up, we have Gillian Harvey. Gillian is the Health Improvement Lead for Acute Services in the Public Health Directorate of NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. She manages the Hospital Support and Information Services across NHSGGC hospitals and the Family Support Services within the Royal Hospital for Children. I'll hand over to Gillian now. Thank you, Gillian.
Hi everyone, thank you for that introduction. I'll just share my slides with you and hopefully you can see these okay. So thanks again for that introduction. So as I said, my name's Gillian Harvey. I'm a Health Improvement Lead for Acute within the Public Health Directorate. My information's on the screen there. I've also included the website there to the services that I manage across our hospitals. In our adult hospitals or our main hospitals, that's support and information services, and as I say, within the children's hospital, that's the Royal Hospital for it's the Family Support Service, which is the equivalent service. So I'm here specifically today to talk to you about the crisis support that's available within these hospital services. But I thought it was useful just to briefly mention, because I know there'll be a range of people from different audiences here today, in terms of what these services normally do. Just a quick introduction in terms of what these services normally do within the hospitals. So these services are known as the first port of call for all non-clinical and social care inquiries. So on a daily basis, we receive a variety of different referrals from on the wards, from our clinical departments and from clinicians that identify patients, carers, visitors, etc., that require support that's non-clinical, that's a social or a public health issue, and they refer to these teams. Now, the teams can do ward outreach, they can go up to the bedside, or indeed the patient or carer can come into the actual shop front service, which is based in all the main atriums of the hospitals. In terms of these services, they monitor actual needs, so we never make assumptions in terms of what's important in terms of hospital care or in terms of that care planning conversation for a patient or carer. One of the most interesting parts of our job is around the public health intelligence aspect, in terms of monitoring trends alongside our analysts to see who's presenting at our hospitals, what are the needs that they're presenting, and what is our teams doing in terms of responding to that need. So that's a bit of the, in terms of public health, that we find really interesting and useful. The hospital's services themselves have been designed with the idea that as much as they're an NHS service and they're on an NHS premises, we try to make them as, I guess, as inviting as possible to have that care planning conversation. We want people to talk to us, and they've been designed in that sort of comfortable way to allow that to happen. So as I've said, we have a remit for inpatients and outpatients, our carers, families, but we also have a remit for NHSGGC staff as well in terms of their own health and wellbeing needs. So they can present to us similarly like our patients do, completely confidential, and we will, again, the team will pick up their support needs as well at the same time. One of our core remits for these services across the hospitals is to reduce readmission rates at hospitals. We don't want to see people back in the hospital. That's absolutely not what we want to do. And the team do that through self-management, and similarly to Glasgow Helps that you heard from there, the team are experts in those holistic needs assessment conversations to tease out what are the most important things for people in terms of that support. Absolutely, as well, with regards to the crisis support, which I'm going to go on and talk about in a wee second, timely discharge is another one that we want to, another priority for these services. We want to see people who are admitted getting out in a timely fashion and getting home with the support that they need. So these services work to do that as well. And finally, on this slide is just to mention that we work closely with a lot of external partners, and we host partners within these hospital services as well. So a good example of this is our money, advice and financial inclusion colleagues. We host them within our services to offer that one-stop shop for patients and carers, etc., so as we can do as much as possible before people leave us. So that's a picture of some of the services across the hospital there. And I know these slides are going to be circulated, and if you've got, so as you can look at these pictures in a wee bit more closely, they vary in design, but the aspects are the same. The only hospital that we don't currently have one of these services across our health board area at the moment is Inverclyde Royal, but we're currently building that, and we're hopeful that that one will be built before the end of this year. In terms of our public footfall across these hospitals, it's sort of capped. At the moment, we're seeing just under 9,500 patients and carers, etc., accessing these services. Probably within the next year or so, with IRH coming on board, we'll probably see about 10,500. But it's worth pointing out that we get an indication of needs in terms of these services, but because of our service capacity in terms of our staff, it's naturally capped. So it's worth pointing that out. They give a snapshot of needs, but if we had millions of staff, I can imagine that these numbers would be far greater in terms of that. But it does give us a useful snapshot, and we do target the most vulnerable patients and carers that are accessing the hospitals. We have a variety of marketing materials available as well, so if you do want any more information following today, you can contact the service email or website, and we have leaflets, posters, etc. that we have within the hospital setting. So to today's specific topic, which is the crisis aspect of what these services provide in hospitals, in 2022, we were tasked with the priority around delivering and evaluating a range of crisis activity within acute services in response to the UK cost of living crisis. Now, quite simply put, this was due to the absolute high volume of patients and carers that we were seeing that were experiencing difficulties and crisis with the basics. We were talking foods, fuel, money and housing were the main ones we were seeing. A shift away from some of our bread and butter public health issues around health behaviour change or disease management. The focus was very much on these crisis issues around the basics that we were seeing before we could even touch the disease or the condition that they'd been diagnosed with. So I'll talk you through some of the ones that we have within these hospital services across our health board area now. The ones that are bold, I'm going to just highlight in a wee bit more detail for you in the next few slides. But the first one that we have available is our paediatric emergency grant. So within the Children's Hospital, within family support, we're able to hand out a £5 to £50 immediate cash grant to parents or carers who have a child in hospital. Now that can be for poverty-related issues or crisis issues relating to travel expenses, affording to get to hospital, foods, etc. But the natural nature of emergency at Children's Hospital means that we can see families who are blue lighted in from Orkney, Shetlands, that sometimes just don't have time to grab anything. They turn up in their pyjamas because of the emergency situation. So sometimes the cash is just handed out in that sort of guise as well. At any stage when we hand out any of these grants or practical cash first responses, the team always do holistic needs assessment as well. So in terms of that wider holistic support. Our next grant that we've got is the maternity emergency grant, which I'm going to talk to you in the next slide. But again, that's a £5 to £50 grant for pregnant women accessing appointments at hospitals within GGC. We've got our emergency food on discharge service, and again, I'll talk to you about that one in a second. We also have our essentials bundle, which we're able to provide across hospitals now, which is clothing, toiletries and pet food. We found that pet food was a big one in terms of people being discharged from hospital and not being able to afford food when they eventually got their pet back. So again, we can provide that type of support. We also, as I've mentioned, have a hosted money advice, and we also have a crisis home energy service response within all of our hospitals as well within these services, which provide, particularly getting the boilers back on when someone's been in hospital for a while. Maybe they've went into debt or arrears with that, so we can get the energy immediately put back on, get them that support out with that following their discharge. We also have a specialist money advice service for homeless patients. And again, I'll talk in a wee bit more detail in a second about that. We have a staff hardship grant, which we've developed in partnership with our HR services and our occupational health services. What we were seeing, I guess, during the cost of living crisis over the last couple of years was that our NHS staff were experiencing the same hardship as our patients were. They were finding it difficult to get to work. They were finding it difficult to pay utility bills. So they were making the decision as to travel expenses or feeding families. And as a result, we were seeing sickness records. When we got to the nub of it, it was actually a social issue rather than an illness in terms of staff not being able to afford to go to work, etc. So as a result, we're now able to offer up to £100 cash grant to our NHS staff. And we're able to provide them the same holistic support in terms of what we provide our patients. So a carer, we might identify them as carers. We might identify that they've got a long-term condition or chronic disease that we need to support them with, etc. So obviously under the premise that we can't deliver good care to our patients if we aren't taking care of our staff. We also have the AD Navigator service, which is in the Royal Host for Children, which I'll mention in a second as well. So that's the package that we're able to do. So in a wee bit more detail in some of them, we have the hospital outreach service, which is with the Mary Trust, which is our homeless service. Now, part of, as much as we have the team do referrals for housing, etc., with the patients that we see, we did find that the homeless population that we see within the hospitals was a particular challenge for us. There's a lot of services that can't pick up that wider support if someone doesn't have a fixed address. The three main hospitals across GGC that we experienced the difficulties with are Queen Elizabeth, Stobhill Hill and Glasgow Royal Infirmary. Those are the three hospitals we see the most homeless patients presenting at. We're now working with Mary Trust. They're a fabulous service. They're a specialist service. We now host them within Support and Information Service to provide that specialist support to our homeless patients that are accessing these hospitals. The maternity grant I've briefly mentioned, this was a cash grant, £5 to £50 for pregnant women accessing our hospital appointments. It was funded by Glasgow Children's Hospital Charity from 2022 to the current date. Unfortunately, this one's due to finish, and purely because we've run out of money. But it's been incredibly successful as a pilot in terms of understanding the complex needs of pregnant women accessing acute appointments in the hospital environment. In terms of this grant, with 850 pregnant women access this grant, and we've spent over 37,000 in small grants. That's up to £50. So you can see how much in terms of how many grants we've put through this. The need for this grant was particularly high during year one, and that was because we didn't limit the volume of grants that could be claimed, because we were obviously aware someone's pregnant for 9 months, so they would be accessing more than one appointment. Fortunately, in year two, due to the absolutely overwhelming demand, we had to reduce this to a one-off grant. The key themes that we've sort of seen through this are listed there. Probably one of the ones that did come out for us was the complex pregnancies involving repeat appointments, and we've shared that learning with maternity services. So, for example, we did a case study where a woman who had a complex pregnancy was asked to come to appointments within 2 appointments at the PRM within Glasgow Royal Infirmary. Twice within a 3-week period. Now, that's a lot of money to travel if you don't have money to get there. So this kind of scheduling of appointments is the things that we're sort of feeding back. Poverty and money issues was another one, and asylum seeker and refugees. We were overwhelmed with the volume of really vulnerable asylum seeker pregnant women who were accessing this grant via this service. So there was different referral pathways, etc., that we needed that are learning in terms of that as well. The highest need for this grant was travel, overwhelmingly at 52%, but we did see other uses for this grant: food 36%, clothing at 10%, and 2% used for things like mobile top-up cards to ensure mobile phones could be used. So that was our maternity grant. It still exists. It finishes at the end of this year. It's been running for nearly 3 years, but we are now working with local authorities and also our own internal catering around our exit strategies, particularly around travel support and food for pregnant women. So that's ongoing. The next sort of service that our crisis support service within that bundle that we're really proud of is our emergency food on discharge service. This is a 2-day food bag that's provided to anybody experiencing difficulties with food going home, particularly on discharge, but not exclusively. There's a video link within this presentation, and please feel free when the slides are shared to have a look at that in more detail. This is a partnership we have with our internal catering, Aroma Foods, that provide our perishable food items that are listed on screen. And we also have a partnership with food banks across GGC who provide the non-perishable food items. These are delivered to us free of charge, pre-packed to our specification, and it is an absolutely amazing partnership. It's a 2-day food supply, as I've said. The team also do the holistic needs assessment, and they ask the money and fuel question at the same time in terms of someone leaving our premises. So it's been really, really successful in terms of that. The Family Navigator was one I also wanted to highlight, which is in the Royal Hospital for Children. This is a partnership we have with Glasgow Children's Hospital Charity and also the Meds Against Violence, who run the ED Navigator services across acute hospitals within Scotland. We're currently piloting a family service focusing on families presenting ED who are under 16 years old. And this is mainly because my own services, family support services, are 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. We didn't have a weekend services, we didn't have evening services, and the problem with this is the vulnerability that presents, particularly at the weekends, etc. So we wanted to make sure the same volume of cash practical responses was available for those patients as well. It's been really successful so far, and we are looking at rolling that out further than the 18 months it's currently funded. We work closely with our emergency department consultants on this project, and it's providing us with, again, excellence intelligence in terms of vulnerable needs at the Children's Hospital. On this slide here, as well as some of the other grants, we provide a lot within the Children's Hospital, if I'm honest. It's never enough, but we do try our best to provide as much as we can. One of the other grants that we have, again, is a cash grant for cardiac-specific families, so children who have a cardiac condition, which is a £10 to £70 cash grant. We also provide access and link to we host the Young Patients Family Fund team within our team again, to provide access to the Scottish Government, access to the travel expenses and food for if you've got a child in hospital, which is a daily allowance there. And things like pyjamas, toiletries, etc., we provide all that as well. Energy, I've mentioned, is still a big one for us, and I'll give you some of the details in terms of who we've accessed, but Money Matters is one of the main hosted partners that we have in Support and Information Services. You may have heard of them, that provide that sort of detailed support for that onward energy referral, but particularly getting the boiler back on so no one's returning to a cold, damp home. I just wanted to finish very quickly on some success stories with this, with these sort of emergency support over the last year. So over the last financial year, Support and Information Services have provided over £31,000 in small grants, and that's £5 to £50 to vulnerable patients, carers, pregnant women and staff accessing these services. And 100% of these patients have received holistic support following that. So a detailed care planning conversation with the team. In terms of our emergency food and discharge, since December 24, we've provided 341 emergency food packs when people have returned home requiring this support. Again, holistic needs assessment takes place there, and the energy and the money question. The other point to notice is that there is a social isolation issue attached to this. A lot of the patients that access this service are over the age of 80 and are often caring for themselves with no one else around. So this again has been a great service, and we work closely with Scottish Ambulance Service, etc., Red Cross with this service as well. The hospital-based money services that are based within our services as well. Support and Information Services have had 3,762 referrals as of the end of 23-24 financial year. So my team are making approximately 72 referrals a week to financial inclusion services, with 4.5 million gains for patients that we're seeing on a yearly basis. Our energy service, again, 415 referrals, 42,000 in financial gains, and 91,000 managed there with that response as well. Our staff hardship grant, at the end of the financial year there, we had 452 staff that had been supported with over £43,000 worth of cash grants. And obviously at every stage, it's that holistic needs assessment that the staff do. I wanted to just finish on two really important points. The first photograph there is we couldn't do this without the support of a lot of the charitable organisations and the donations that we receive to these services now across GGC. That's actually the RAH Cub Group, the Paisley Cub Group, that are donating toiletries to our service at the RAH. They do that for their Good Citizen badge. And their packs are fantastic. We see that echoed right across our hospitals in terms of church groups, guide groups, scout groups, you name it, which is really, really well received. And the other picture there is just some of our partners that we also host as well within these services, providing their services free of charge. So Social Security Scotland, the ICJ, Macmillan, etc., all hosted within these services across hospitals. And that's our service there at the Vale of Leven. So that's my details again, and that was a very whistle-stopped tour there. And again, we have case studies, etc. we can share, but happy to take any questions.
That was wonderful, Gillian. Thank you so much. It really was a whistle-stop tour of the various different types of cash first support on offer at hospitals across NHSGGC. It's also really great to hear how many people you've helped, and especially the holistic needs assessments that take place as standard. So it's really great to hear all of that. We have some time now for questions. So if anyone has questions, please either raise your hands I'll pop them in the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to as many of these as possible. Okay, so we have our first question from Carolina asking, are there interpreters provided for both of these services?
Yeah, I can go first, Gillian, if you don't mind. Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that. We do have interpreters available just to make the services accessible as possible. So yes, absolutely, interpreters are available.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yes, and absolutely, we have an NHS interpreting team, so we're able to access the interpreting services immediately, and the team would do that. If English isn't their first language, that would be one of the very first things that the team would do to make sure that we're having that conversation that's meeting their needs. So yeah, we have that too.
It's good that you've both clarified, but I guess in fairness, given the nature of your services, it makes sense that you would be thinking about these things pretty much in the first instance. And Gillian, I know you mentioned as well with the maternity emergency grants that some of the women that are presenting are refugees or asylum seekers. So I assume, there would be a greater need potentially of translation services there.
Something we also do with these hospital services is equality impact assessments, just to make sure that these services are meeting every single need in terms of English isn't a first language, or if there's disability access, to make sure that we've got that reach across a wide range. So we do that, we update that as regularly as we can to make sure they are as accessible, because we do want to reach the most vulnerable.
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you both. I'm surprised. I thought there would be a lot more questions waiting for us here. Oh, here's another one. So Tommy's asking, with the hospital drop-in sessions, is there anyone offering debt advice for credit cards, loans, help with accessing solutions like DAS, insolvency, etc.? I don't know what DAS is. I don't know if one of you knows.
So would this be the Hospital Support and Information Services in terms of our services at hospitals? Yeah. This question.
So it mentioned it's specifically about the hospital drop-in sessions. It must be, is it that debt advice service perhaps?
Yeah, so we have hosted across all of these services a contract with specific financial inclusion services. So for Queen Elizabeth and for Glasgow Royal Infirmary, which are our two largest hospitals, we have a partnership with a specialist called GMAP that provide that contracted, they're hosted within our services there, so they're physically there. For our ACH hospitals, our ambulatory care hospitals, which is the New Victoria and Shawlands and also Stop Hill in the north, we have a contract with some of our cab services in terms of that. In RAH in Paisley, we have an informal relationship, and when I say informal, it's because we don't currently have a paid contract with them. We pay the other ones to come in, but we do have an informal relationship where we have referrals sent to, again, it's Renfrewshire Cab that we use there as well, and I think it's Renfrewshire Advice Works that the team use. And similarly with Fail Leaving, we've got a hosted partner in there as well. So it just varies. It's the local provider, but the main crux, we actually have we pay them to come in, which is GMAT. Well, sorry, I should say as well, we have Money Matters contract for the Royal Hospital Children.
Yes.
So we've got a lot of them.
I hope that answers your question, Tommy. And Gillian, how great that you have all of those answers right tips of your fingers. Absolutely perfect. Thank you. We've now got a question from Joan, who's asking, is there any provision in place for patients who are discharged at night after the offices are closed?
The only current service we've got like that, other than obviously the clinicians still have a role. So we're not exclusively doing this. So you've still got the role of a nurse or a healthcare support worker that will have that care plan around that. So we wouldn't leave someone with nothing, I guess, is the thing. In terms of our services, the only out of hours we provide our emergency food on discharge 24/7 in all the major acute hospitals. So that can still be picked up out of hours. But the only out of hours officers that we currently have is the partnership at Royal Hospital for Children at the ED department with Meds Against Violence. And it's a tricky one because often A&E is where people are presenting, but we obviously do across Scotland have Meds Against Violence, which are an ED specialist, which are partly funded, I believe, by Glasgow University as well, and they're right across Scotland doing that specialist ED. A lot of their focus as well is alcohol, drugs, violence, that kind of thing. So unfortunately, that's all we've got at the moment, but we can pick it up if we receive a referral following that during the day. But yeah, it's an interesting question.
That's helpful, thank you. Just to confirm, is ED emergency department?
Yes, so we no longer seem to say A&E, which was what I always said, showing my age. Yeah. But A&E is accident and emergency. We now just say ED, which is emergency departments, instead of A&E. That's the latest jargon.
Okay, so there's always so much jargon. That's just the nature of these things. Thank you so much. We've got another question from Lauren Devine asking, has there been any update on IRH?
I kind of sometimes joke, I've been joking with colleagues that it's taken us longer to build this than the Great Wall of China, but yeah, we are really, really keen to get this service up and running. It's just there's been various different build issues that we've had with the I guess it's building something in an old space. We are really hopeful it will be opened this side of the year, and it won't be any further, and we'll get that one opened and running. The space looks fantastic. The designs are fantastic. I received updated photographs of it yesterday. We're just not quite there yet, but it will be just as you wander in the main atrium, just at the admission desks is where the new support and information service will be. But we'll be doing a comms launch of that one, and we'll be inviting local partners to attend and see it, etc.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Tommy is coming back to us to say he works for One Parent Family Scotland. I think that's what OPFS is, and they have a new national debt service. And he said he'll liaise with you to see if there's any outreach that they can offer. So that's wonderful. We
also have team meetings as well. I'm always keen for partners to come and present at our wider team meetings across the hospitals as well.
This is what it's all about: networking, making these connections. So Tommy, Gillian has shared her email address in the slides. We'll also be sharing all this information after the webinar, so please do get in touch. That would be great. Then we've got a question from Mark. These are all hospital-based questions. I'm so sorry, Cara Marie. Mark is asking, in a hospital setting, what are some of the examples of how patients find out about the support available?
Yeah, so there's a variety. We do have comms plans, but I guess one of the most successful ways is word of mouth. We tend to find that this spreads, particularly in Children's Hospital. We have things like parents' coffee mornings, etc., where our team go up and they just feed in informally, because parents are often there for a long time. You know, they've checked in hospital for a few weeks and they chat about the service. But other ways that we do promote our services, obviously we've got some comms materials available, leaflets, posters. Social media, we use the board's social media policy in terms of our tweet. Oh, it's not Twitter anymore, is it? It's in fact, I don't think we're using Twitter at all now. We don't use it. It's more Facebook, I guess, is where the sort of platform that's getting used for that. We have our website. We similar to some of the kind of the case studies. We use that kind of thing quite a lot in terms of in terms of raising the comms and things, but I guess we could always be doing more is the thing about this, you know, in terms of these services, but word of mouth tends to be the main one. We go and we present at different departments as well, just to make them aware. On newsletters, you name it, but
and probably things like rolling screens and things, so I'm sure
the solar screens, we've got all that in the hospitals. It's never, we'd always like to do more, I guess, is the thing. But yeah.
That's why you're doing as much as you are, because you're keen to do more.
And today, we're hoping today will be another really good comms exercise.
Absolutely. That's the hope, isn't it? That's the whole point of all of this. Thank you. We've got Crawford asking, do either of you see much demand or request for physical activity opportunities? Appreciate it's not a crisis issue, so I don't know which one of you. Cara Marie, do you want to come in?
Certainly. No, thank you for the question, Crawford. I'd say just on this, we do see people getting in touch with us. I would say it might not necessarily be for physical activity opportunities. It could be they've got in touch around maybe feeling a bit isolated, looking for support with reaching out to things in their local community or cultural activities. And that would certainly be something that we would look at if that person was looking to get involved in, say, new groups or meet people around them. That's certainly a great opportunity for people to connect and yeah, absolutely see what's local to them. So we would definitely consider that, and if there's any suggestions, I can send my email round as well if anyone on the call has anything, any organisations they're part of that they think would be useful for us to have available for our staff to suggest to people we get in contact with, certainly.
Brilliant, thank you. Gillian?
I was just going to add to that. Yes, we tend to see a lot more in acute around people prep for surgery, for example. So this type of projects that we work with, the focus is Inspire, is the name of the specific service in GRI, for example. So with people that need to lose weight, for example, to prep for surgery. So this is where physical activity would come in really well. But just in terms of managing long-term conditions and healthy lifestyles, etc., maybe rehabilitation after they've had a stroke or whatever it might be. So absolutely a place for physical activity. Do we see those referrals immediately, regularly? Not as much as we'd like to, because of the major crisis issues we've been seeing in the presentations recently to do with housing, food, fuel and money. Those are the crux ones that we've been seeing. But physical activity, absolutely. We do have a physical activity team within public health that you might already link with. And again, I can make those links if that's of use to you. We've got like Live Active, Vitality, all these services that we provide in partnership with the local authorities within the NHS. So yeah, happy to make more links. But yeah, prepping for surgery is an interesting area.
Thank you so much. I'm conscious of the time. We've got one more quick question. We've got Joan asking, are there any plans for putting a CIS office in the new Parkhead hub?
No, because it is not one of our main acute hospital sites. Unfortunately, we only have the funding and the capacity to put them into our major clinical acute hospitals, unfortunately. If we could get these everywhere under the sun, we would do. What I would do, I am aware that there's things been created within libraries, health hubs, etc. And I know public health are involved in that development because of around that community presence. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's just major acute hospital sites across the board.
That makes sense. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for all these excellent questions. I think we got to all of them, but if you have any more, we'll share contact details. Please feel free to come back with any other questions. If we have any more questions, we'll share those with everyone in a follow-up email with the webinar evaluation and the link to the recording. One of the main aims of this webinar was to provide everyone attending with information that will help you in your work, particularly to raise awareness of the various cash-first supports that are available for people that are experiencing food insecurity across Glasgow in the community and in hospital settings. It's great to hear how many people both services have supported and that both of you take a really holistic approach to people and what they need. I'd like to say a really big thank you to our speakers and to everyone who's attended today. The webinar has been recorded and it'll be made available after the event. We would really welcome your feedback and thoughts on the webinar. There is probably a link in the chat just now. If not, it will be sent in a follow-up email as well, because your comments are very important for us to develop future webinars. Finally, here's the link just now, a very special thank you to the Glasgow Centre for Population Health Communications team for helping us to put on the event today. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. Bye now.